News Radio, 830 KHVH. A very good Monday morning to you all, and welcome back. It is all right, I'm going to be on. All right, I'm always transparent. My microphone stand is broken, and so you're going to hear me try and adjust, and I was going to say something else, adjust it to ensure that I can actually speak into this thing. So I apologize. There we go. Come on, baby. Come on now. There we go. All right, but we're going to be in good shape because it is the Shopo Hour and have been waiting so patiently to have the fellas back in studio. And we start, of course, with Bobby Cavaco, Steve Keogh, and Mark Criccio. Brothers, I want to wish you all a very good morning.
Good morning, Rick. Good morning, boys. Another week, another hour, another discussion.
On my seventh favorite day of the week.
Most favorite, yes.
Yeah, that's it. Brother Steve, how are you?
Morning, boys. Morning, boys. Rick, always happy and grateful to be here with you and your listeners.
We have a lot of ground to cover, fellas.
We do.
We do. And, ladies and gentlemen, a triumphant return.
I'm back, baby.
From spending 3 weeks in an austere monastery at the base of the Himalayas, contemplating life, but back with a refreshed, renewed vigor. Brother Mark Criccio.
Yeah,
Welcome back, brother.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Morning, Rick.
Morning.
Morning, Bobby. Morning, Steve. Morning, everyone. Good to be back.
We're delighted. We're delighted.
To be back.
Bobby, set the table for us. The Shopo Hour. What's the intent of the time that we spend together?
Well, the intent is the union in itself and me and Steve being at the head to have an open dialogue with the community at large to really tell our side of the story for our members on what they do each and every single day, and just to give a perspective from a police officer, because a lot of times what we see in the mainstream media is just one side of the story. So, we'd like to give our side and just articulate why officers do what they do.
Excellent. Steve, Ed?
Sure. Just we feel very fortunate, Rick, to have your platform to make the community feel more connected with the police departments that serve them statewide. We feel that Bobby and I try to do our best to represent what our members are thinking. You give us the opportunity to talk about different issues that come up, and we can, from a police standpoint, give the community our perspective on things. We try to be as open and transparent. We have robust discussion, and hopefully your listeners get something out of it at the end of the day.
Amen, brother. Amen, indeed. And Brother Mark, as a retired HPD major, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, prior to retirement, we had many conversations, and I wanted to come on after I retired because I feel the men and women are underrepresented of the awesome job that they do. Especially the way the news and the politicians come after them, and there's not another side to the story. So I thank you for having this show with us for us to explain that other side.
It couldn't happen without your willingness to be here, and for that I'm very thankful. Let's jump right on in. Recent news covers. There's been a spate of really violent crime. It's just, that's what we're hearing. And in the news from the H3 horrific incident on Kalakaua Avenue in Waikiki and in between and all around. The reality of the rise in crime, and let me rephrase that, not fair. The reality of the level of crime that we're experiencing, island and statewide. I'll ask all three of you, starting with Bobby. If you were a doctor, what is your prognosis?
I would say our prognosis would be we're in the trauma room right now, and we need all hands on deck. It's an emergency surgery to save a life, and we're at a very critical point. That's what I would say.
Goodness. Steve?
I echo that statement. We need to get, which I think we're going in the right direction. We need to get serious. We need to identify where we can do better as agencies, and we need to have open conversations with the community, leaders within the community, of how we can make this better.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Mark?
My take on it is crime is a direct result of prosecutors and judges and politicians and their policies. Just think if we had tough on crime stance, crime wouldn't be as bad as it is. However, H3 Waikiki, you can't say there's a rise in crime because of those incidents. And I remember when I was a major in Waikiki, we had those stabbings, a couple in a row or 2 days in a row or 2 at the same night. And the newspapers and the politicians would go crazy. Crime is out of control in Waikiki, this and that. They're isolated incidents. You can't fix stupid, to put it bluntly. These people are going to do what they're going to do. But you can't blame a rise in crime on the police for these isolated incidents. So
I think, go ahead, Bobby.
No, and I just wanted to mention the incident on the H3 with the murder. Obviously it's another domestic violence situation. And what hit me when I saw that is the news automatically make a correlation that it's somebody from the military and that only the military deals with domestic violence or has a profound effect. No, it doesn't. It has a profound effect on everybody. Postal workers, people that work at convenience stores, police officers, firefighters, everybody, politicians. It doesn't matter what profession you do. Domestic violence doesn't have an ethnic background, or you can relate it to only these types of people in these professions suffer, with the issue of domestic violence. So I thought, and they always come out with, then you have Nancy Friedman, of course, come on, talk about domestic violence and whatnot. Well, why are we only talking about domestic violence related issues when stuff like this happens? Why are we not talking about it when it's not happening? Because that's when you can save a life, is when you promote publicly that story instead of just doing it when stuff like that happens.
So we're treated to these stories quite a bit. And I'm glad, Mark and gentlemen, of highlighting that in the news, there might be story after, but that's not a representation of the total picture. But it is sense of temperature taking, because when we don't have it in the news or have it treated, then the impression is, hey, man, everything's great. Hey, we're doing great. There's more. You got to find the happy medium in what the reality is. Just a quick dovetail. I made a comment on the show of the highlighting of the U.S. military, using that as an entree to have an exhaustive look at U.S. military actions. I love Nancy, and I know that she came out and she had comments about this, and then it focused on all of this on this one story. You're right. Where's the level of information, accessibility, and preparedness? Going back to something you said briefly, politicians and government officials, et cetera, they set the table. What is the law in regard to domestic violence? What are the rules of engagement with the domestic violence? And so maybe that's where the focus, I don't think one candidate has been asked a question about domestic violence up until this point. So if it's that rife and that serious, it should be in the top of the list along with other issues. Steve?
Rick, when you were speaking, it just made me think. Bobby and I actually went to the debate that was at the Sheridan, the super debate. Okay, we were there.
Yeah.
And I found it interesting that the news organization that was hosting the debate, the quote unquote questions they were saying were coming from the audience. And our audience wants to know this question and that question. When I heard some of the questions, I felt that they were so off the wall and not appropriate for the candidates running here. I thought some of them were inflammatory. I thought they weren't as direct as they could be. And this goes to your point. Who's asking the questions? The candidates are there to participate in a robust debate. I felt that the questions asked were a little bit subpar. Bobby and I were in the audience. I mean, you had the Republicans being asked if they would vote for Trump by Keahi Tucker. It's like, come on. I felt that the questions asked at the super debate, when they quote unquote said, "Oh, this is from our audience." This was never from the audience. This was from, I felt, producers or higher ups within their organization that have some kind of agenda. And to your point that you just made, serious questions need to be asked by these candidates related to DV and other things. Let's get serious and ask them tough questions and not throw these, I'm going to say, partisan nonsense questions. Do you remember that, Bobby? The questions were...
No, I totally agree.
No.
We're going to be together until 8 o'clock this morning. Time is flying by already, 7:19. Now, There's plenty on the agenda for the fellas. However, your telephone calls are number one, and we are going to phone calls when we return after this. It is the Shopo Hour, and you're on News Radio 830 KHVH. Hey, everybody, welcome back. News Radio 830 KHVH. And by the way, before we get to the calls, Bobby, Steve, Mark, Duke Iona, he's created a spot celebrating your endorsement of him for governor. Would you like to share a little bit more info about that endorsement?
Yeah, actually, this is a first for us because I can't remember in the history of our union where we endorsed the governor and they made commercials as far as our endorsement. So we're really, obviously we worked with Duke and his campaign with that, but it's a sight for fresh eyes knowing that the candidate we endorsed is really behind law enforcement and it's police officers statewide.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Thank you very much for that. We're going to take a call and go to Richard here in Honolulu. Richard, thank you for the call. You're on with the fellas from Shopo. And once again, Richard in Honolulu. Good morning.
Good morning, Rick, and good morning, fellas. Okay, I would like to briefly revisit House Bill number 2171, introduced by the State Department of Law Enforcement. Apart from it being a further expansion of government, as well as a redundancy in police supervision, would it also be fair to say, in your opinions, that this bill may also be construed as a clever ruse toward the beginnings of the implementation of a national police force, much the same way that they've been nationalizing our energy industry?
Allow me for a moment. What the hell is that question? We have three gentlemen on the streets of our city every day, and our access to them. And we're going to talk about some esoteric, theoretical. Richard, are you just calling to hear yourself speak? Because this is an irrelevant forum for something of this nature. And if you don't mind, gentlemen, I want to reserve the time for discussing what's happening in our city today. You want to call me up later on with open phones and have a chat? That's fine. But it's a rare opportunity that we have when we have these gentlemen in studio to talk about safety in your community. There was a horrific story that emerged of a woman who was stalked in Manoa and then sexually assaulted. And this kind of action and that's the reality. So Richard, call it another time, but help us understand how we can protect ourselves even more from these types of things happening.
The first thing that comes to mind, Rick, with that really tragic and horrific experience for that victim is try to have situational awareness. Situational awareness in your environment. That's where I would start first. Don't live in fear. Don't let that be front of mind with your consciousness, but you need to have situational awareness. Be aware of your surroundings. Don't always be on your phone. Don't be looking at your phone. When you stop and you get out somewhere, take a look, disengage, be focused. How's this? Be present in the moment where you're at. Don't try to multitask and do 5 things at once in certain experiences. Obviously, this guy's a predator. I would say this probably wasn't his first time he did something like that. And it just goes to show you that you have to be responsible for your own personal safety and security.
Heart goes out. I mean, because these, unfortunately, am I correct in saying, not isolated incidents? There are incidents that take place that we don't hear, that we don't know about, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, with this incident, like Steve said, it's the world we live in. You just you got to be aware of your surroundings, regardless how busy. We're all busy. We're all multitasking. We're all doing things, but you got to be aware of your surroundings. And it's unfortunate, but guaranteed this guy is not a first timer. Guaranteed he's done this before or some other type of crime before. Guaranteed.
Love to get your take on the recent announcement between the confab between the mayor Chief Joe, and also the court system and prosecutor's office in regard to early release or bail. I'd like to get your guys' take before we go to our break. So, Bobby, would you lead us off?
Well, that's definitely a step in the right direction, a major step in the right direction to really take a strong stand, with if those that commit the crime and get arrested and they can't make bail, they're going to have to spend the night in jail and then go to court in the morning. It's not just you can't make bail and then the judge comes in an hour later and then releases the person. So I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. We actually are excited that the mayor and Chief Joe and the prosecutors have taken that step.
Bobby, if I could add to that, it shows, Rick, too, that three key players in this community to keep us safe are working together. Mm-hmm. What it shows me is that, again, the right people are talking to each other. There's a collaborative effort, and they're putting their heads together to create a solution. So for that, I need to give the three of them credit, because we've had a couple police chiefs, a couple mayors going back, and I don't know if the three of them have ever come together like this. So I think kudos to them for doing that. To Bobby's point, it's a step in the right direction. Let's keep running with it.
Mark?
So I briefly read the article. I can't remember. Were judges involved with this also? I can't remember.
Yes.
There was, right?
Yes.
So it's about time. I've been screaming for years, everybody need to get together. Because the judges were on one page, prosecutors on another page. To me, the police department is too silent, right? They want to be too nice. But when prosecutors dump cases or they don't accept cases and the judges dump them, let them go, the police department should be screaming. And the officers are frustrated because it's the same people over and over and over again. So it's about time. But let's see if it's not all smoke and mirrors. Let's see if something really gets done.
Well, I'll say I understand I because your perspective is different than mine.
Yeah.
The first time I've ever seen this.
No,
ever.
so that's good. It's
ever.
Yeah.
And the fact that there is a bit of accessibility to the mayor's office, to the chief, that there is the opportunity for all of us to have that conversation to make sure. And how would that fundamentally change in the department itself? For instance, in downtown or Chinatown or Kapolei, how is that now?
Well, it wouldn't really tax the department as far as resources. It'll probably just increase the amount of arrestees that need to be taken to court in the morning. But we have the personnel assigned to the receiving desk to fulfill that requirement. So we don't see it being a burden upon the department, that particular decision.
Right. Well, I'm so happy to see it. I really am, after all this time. And this is kind of like 1567, kind of a salvo shot for the revisitation, right?
I was just going to say that I think the mayor and the prosecutors, and they kind of saw it like, you know what? They tried to pass 1567. We're going to take it into our hands and do what we can do in order to combat this narrative that the legislators are trying to go down.
Right. Steve, we want to connect with you. How do we do so?
Sure. Please come visit us at shopohawaii.org. Again, we're putting that website together. Come see us there, and then that it's going to give you our links to Facebook, the Gram, and Twitter.
And there we have it. The boys are in town. I'm so glad. Reunited again, all together with Bobby, with Steve, and Mark. It is a Shopo Hour. And once again, we'll be back in a moment. Bottom of the hour news, primetime traffic, and more. And did you hear an entire police department has resigned on the mainland? We'll get the boys' take on that and more when we return. The Shopo Hour, 7:32. And we're back, 7:37 in the morning. It is the Shopo Hour with the fellas in studio. Shopo President Bobby Cavaco, Shopo Vice President Steve Keogh, and of course, retired police major, he is Mark Criccio. And the Shopo Hour continues. Something on your mind that you'd like to chat with the boys about? 521-8383. I just mentioned police department in the state of North Carolina. The entire department submitted their recognition, including the chief, citing the management of the city by the city manager, which I believe is under the mayor, but I'm not sure exactly. But a city administrator. Is this the first time we've heard of something like this? And are you surprised that we've now gotten to this point, Bobby?
I think it's very surprising. I don't think I've ever heard of anything like this happening before, and I think it really articulates and justifies the position that we're in nowadays.
If you can imagine, boys, right, the level of frustration that those officers and the leadership of that department must have felt to say, you know what, we're going to walk away from our profession here in this city, not knowing what's in store for us. I would gather that they felt that they were vulnerable from the sense that if they did their jobs as police within the community, that the political leadership would not support them. And that's where things are dangerous right now in our country, Rick. And your listeners are smart enough to know this. Police officers, when they do their job ethically, properly, and follow procedure, need to be supported by the community they protect and serve. And again, if they all walked away, they realized that they were vulnerable, they weren't going to get the support from the community. Now, in a situation like that, the residents in that community, they're not going to be without law enforcement coverage. In the mainland, the sheriff's department for that county, they have a patrol division. As we've shared with your listeners, sheriffs on the mainland are primarily responsible for running the jails, but they also have a sheriff's police section that patrols unincorporated areas or areas within that county that don't have police services. Mm-hmm. So when these officers decided to walk away, the community now is not going to turn into this lawless, town. The sheriff patrols will come in and take over.
Yeah. But this, you mentioned it before, morale, Mark.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe not to this extent of a whole. I mean, I don't know how many people are in this department. Could be a small department, all leaving, but there's departments all over the country, people leaving. Like, look at the retirements and people quitting just NYPD. Thousands are leaving. A good example, my cousin, his son, third generation NYPD officer, quit, went to a county police department because he didn't want to deal with de Blasio at the time, right? Mm-hmm. And the woke policies that they have. So he went to a better department, treating them better benefits, pay is better, right? So you see this all over the country. Plenty of people going to Florida, right? Because they're welcoming them, right? I don't know how many people leave in Chicago, but it can't be good over there either, right?
No, I have my best friend. He's on Chicago PD, and he can't wait to retire. He's got a couple years left, and this is a guy who gave his heart to that city, and he said, Steve, if you came back, you wouldn't recognize it. Rick, I don't know when last time you've been back, but he said the policies again. It all comes back to the leadership of the city. Who's dictating policy? Who's the district attorney or prosecutor? If we look back, boys, there's key people, and it always comes back to who is leading the city and why is that so important. And if they don't do their job effectively, if they're not making the right decision, if they're too woke or they don't have a crime a philosophy where if you commit a crime, there's consequences. Cities are in trouble. And again, I'm assuming that this department, Mark, to your point, I don't think it was all that large, but can you imagine the level of frustration they must have felt to do that? I'm sure that was gut-wrenching. But what they realized is if we're working for politicians and leaders that don't have our back, even the chief left, even the administrators left, that is pretty glaring that no one in that agency felt that they would be supported if they did their job.
Is it reparable? Can the damage be repaired that was perpetrated? And I'll use the city of Seattle and Portland because now the siren call is out. We need our police back. And those are the same politicians and administrators that fell in the woke category and rejected and criticized, etc. How do you repair that? Bobby, is it possible?
It's possible, but it's going to be a long, long, long road just because of just because of the intricate aspects of the job. In you know, you can't really replace officers with 5 years experience, 10 years experience, 20 years experience. Once those officers leave, to start fresh and just bring a whole bunch of people on that have no experience in law enforcement, that's a very, very tall task.
And then to Mark's point, tie it in Seattle or Florida. If I was in my early 20s, or depending on when you get into this career, would you rather work in a state that's pro law enforcement? Would you really want to go to the Pacific Northwest with what you've been hearing? Because to Bobby's point, it's not just the police leadership, it's who's running the cities. And you're not gonna suddenly change things around. That's years. When you're short 300, 400 police, 500, that's not something that can be fixed. That is a 5-year plan to try to turn that stuff around. And in the meantime, you just wonder if that city can be saved. I'm not trying to be dramatic. People are leaving. And then if the people that are leaving, well, then who's coming there? Well, the like-minded people are coming there. So then you're going to have this whole city of, you know what I mean? It's going to be like, well, if you live in this city, it's because you have this political view, you have these values, you have this. It's going to, if we keep going this way, it's going to be like certain cities will dictate your politics, dictate kind of how you want to live your life. I hope we don't get to that point, but.
And where are we, Mark?
So to the point of your listeners, we have an election coming up. See where the people you're going to vote for, see where they stand with law enforcement or the justice system. You know, all those people that voted for that House bill for bail reform, quote unquote, right? So the people have a chance to set things straight for us over here, but don't keep voting these same people in with these rogue policies.
So I know that in the endorsement for Duke, what have you, how do we learn? Aside from just asking a question, I would imagine if it's an incumbent, look at a voting record.
Yeah.
If you encounter, then do ask that very specific, direct question. But there are a lot of folks that, unfortunately, they're not prepared to even ask questions.
And one thing about the debates, I didn't hear any questions about that, where they stand on bail reform, law enforcement. I didn't hear any of that.
That was my point,
right?
Mark. I mean, as police in the audience, I'm going with the crime uptick. Where are the candidates getting challenged on where they stand with issues of crime and security in our community? None of that was asked by the media platform that was hosting that debate.
So there was a lot of references to ethnicity, etc., and that, okay. However, it seems to me that there's a squelching within these ethnic communities of the crime that takes place. Crime on crime, family on family, family members, or what have you. I think one thing that caught my attention was there's a lamenting that the percentage of Native Hawaiians that are the percentage of our population is far less than the percentage of those Native Hawaiians that are incarcerated. And the inference is that we have some sort of institutionalized racism in our justice system because we do not provide adequate legal representation, we don't educate, we may have language barriers. It's a disservice to various ethnic populations. I'll save my opinions for later, but I'd love to hear what's the insight, what's the reality of perhaps this one area when we talk about over prosecution and arrest and incarceration. Mark, you're tapping.
It's a joke. I'm going to say it's a joke because I'm going to tell you when we go to work and our officers are in lineup, we don't sit there, okay, let's go arrest Hawaiians today. Let's go arrest Micronesians today. Okay, tomorrow we're going to arrest white people. No, you do the crime, you go to jail. Simple. Done. And these politicians making it an ethnic thing is a joke. It's crazy. Go ahead, Steve.
My first talk is, this is the United States of America. We have the best criminal justice system in the world. Is it perfect? No. Is it the best? Yes. I take offense as a community member and as a police officer when any politician during election cycle wants to pander to a certain ethnic group to get votes. That's what this really is about. This is to start beating the drum to generate support for someone's candidacy by making these claims and such. And I'm going to echo Mark's point, okay? Here in Honolulu, which is where I work and where I live, and I've been to the other counties in the state of Hawaii, the police officers that put the uniform on every day do their job regardless of color, religion, beliefs. It's that simple. We're talking here in our state of Hawaii, the county law enforcement officers that do the job every day. They are not racially profiling. They are not making it a point to go into marginalized communities. Anybody that's listening to someone tell you that, ask them where they're getting their statistics from. Ask them to back up those statements. Ask them where they're coming from this vantage point, because it's this kind of rhetoric that damages the trust between the community and the police department.
Mm-hmm.
And these people are given too much of a voice. They need to be called out on where are you getting these facts from? Where is it done? And again, it's not just the police department. You have supposedly a corrections department. Maybe we need to support the corrections department more, which ties into the conversations we've had many times on this program about successfully building a jail. So maybe we could actually rehabilitate some of the people when they're inside so they don't reoffend.
Bobby?
I think it goes back to just putting everything into perspective when they start to say that this is either racially or, based on ethnic background. If in a place like Hawaii you have majority Native Hawaiian, guess who's going to be the most ethnic population in jail? Native Hawaiian. You pick a state like Minnesota. If 75% of the population was Japanese, how many do you think the majority population in the jail there would be Japanese? I mean, like we had mentioned earlier in this show, in shows past, as far as these statistics, they can be swayed either way.
I think that we got to take a break. 7:50 in the morning. Regroup for just a moment. Let that absorb for just a bit while we pause for primetime traffic. But in really appreciative of this conversation with Shopo Hour with Bobby, Steve, and Mark. Stand by. We're going to return. And again, 521-8383 if you like. But we'll have more in a moment. Eternal thanks for Bobby, Steve, and Mark for being a part of this program. It is the Shopo Hour on News Radio 830 KHVH. I want to turn it over to the fellas because we have just a few minutes remaining and kind of urge, if you wouldn't mind, in a direction to have us become more relatable to the duties and the daily service of our men and women who do serve. So when we see an officer, I saw an officer in my building's elevator the other day as just coming down, and we just had a chat, and I just thanked him. I said, thank you very much for taking care of our neighborhood and more. And you could tell it was a compliment that maybe not really receiving that often. And how can you relate the day-to-day a little bit more so we can have more appreciation?
Well, our men and women, statewide, that interact with the community every day in patrol. That's why I always loved policing, because every day is different in patrol. You don't have the same monotony in other types of professions where it's the same things happen, every day. The people you meet in the community, you meet, convenience store clerks, you meet just people from all walks of life that you meet the victims of the crimes, you meet the other end, the suspects, the criminals in itself, but really that interaction with the community goes a long way. And by the community at large, like you, Rick, going up to the officer and just thanking him or her for their service and what they do goes a long way.
Yeah. So So, Rick, within the county police departments that we have statewide, the men and women that do this job, inherently, there's a couple basic principles. They want to do the right thing. Ultimately, when you choose to get into the police profession, you have this inherent internal passion that you want to help others. You want to help others that can't help themselves, and you inherently want to do the right thing. You appreciate a sense of camaraderie. You like different challenges. And within each of the agencies countywide, you have officers that are in specialized units. You have officers that are in investigative units. You have officers that are in patrol. The officers that are in patrol, they're kind of like the face for the department. They're the ones that are wearing the uniform. They're the ones that are driving the cars. They're the ones that you see going around in the community. And to Bobby's point, look, at the end of the day, who doesn't like to be complimented for a job well done? Who doesn't like to be recognized? I've said this many times. We're not robots. We're real people. We just have a job that's a little different than most. Who doesn't appreciate a attaboy, a pat on the back every now and then?
Yeah.
Especially with the scrutiny that our profession can sometimes come under.
Amen. Brother Mark?
Yeah, so the public, as well as the politicians, have no idea what these officers go through each day. They're going from 0 to 60 in a matter of seconds sometimes. You know, they could be having a regular chat with a citizen on the street, and bam, they're going to a shooting. Or the horrific scenes they see. Take the H3 recently, the 7-Eleven, right, with the machete thing, right? Who's the first one on scene? Who has to deal with that? Officers, right? So, to Steve's point, we're not robots. You know, go thank a police officer when you see him or her, right? So, and they take that home with them. People don't realize that. You know, what we see, what these officers see daily, you know, it doesn't stop at their 8-hour or a 9-hour shift. You know, it stays with them.
There we go. Thank you for all of that. Great morning, again, as always. And I appreciate all the time that it takes to appear here every week. Bobby, president of Shopo. Steve, vice president of Shopo. Mark, he's the president of the Mark Criccio fan club. It's amazing how that...
Yeah, total of one.
As a retired major, I thank you very much. Bobby, I'm going to turn it over to you for a closing thought on behalf of Shopo in about half a minute, 20 seconds or so. What would you like to share?
Well, we'd obviously like to thank all of our members statewide again for going out there and the countless selfless acts that each and every one of them do for our community every day. We have a lot of stuff going on. Our contract for our officers will be coming out very, very, very soon, and we can't wait to share it with them and the community at large, and you know, really give homage to their sacrifices.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Bobby, thank you. Steve, thank you. And Brother Mark, thank you
thanks,
very
Rick.
much. And we appreciate everyone for joining us for the Shopo Hour each Monday at this time. And stay with us. We'll have more conversation straight ahead. Good morning, Hawaii. It's 8 o'clock.